You're listening to the Fed and Fearless podcast. On today's episode, I'm chatting with Esther Blum about how to go through menopause like a rock star. So stay tuned. Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm your host, Laura Schoenfeld, a registered dietitian, nutrition business coach, and online entrepreneur with over 10 years of experience in online business. And I'm here to show you everything I've learned about creating a life and a business that nourishes you. On this podcast, we'll talk about the lifestyle habits, practical strategies, mindset shifts, and leaps of faith required to build a healthy body, a powerful mind, a strong spirit, and a successful business. Hey there, welcome back to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm your host, Laura Schoenfeld, and today we have a really fun guest for you that's going to talk all about menopause. And menopause doesn't necessarily sound like a fun topic when we think about, what's traditionally associated with menopause. And as someone who's just a few months postpartum now, my doctor told me that the way that I feel is basically like replicating menopause, even though technically I'm not in menopause. So I definitely have a lot more empathy for women going through menopause, being in that postpartum space. And it's something that I think does not get enough attention or support or enough changes in belief about what is possible for somebody going through menopause. I do think that most women believe that menopause is supposed to be terrible, that as soon as you hit menopause, that now you're an old woman. And I know that it doesn't have to be that way, but you do need to do things a little bit differently in order to make sure it doesn't happen that way. So that's exactly what we're talking about today. And our guest is Esther Blum. Esther is the best-selling author of Cavewomen Don't Get Fat, Eat, Drink, and Be Gorgeous, Secrets of Gorgeous, and the Eat, Drink, and Be Gorgeous Project. She currently maintains a busy virtual practice where she helps women balance hormones, lose stubborn body fat, and treat the root cause of health struggles. Her new 5th book, See Ya Later, Ovulator, was released on October 4th, 2022. Esther received a Bachelor of Science in Clinical Nutrition from Simmons College in Boston and is a graduate of New York University, where she received her Master of Science in Clinical Nutrition. Esther is credentialed as a registered dietitian, a certified dietitian-nutritionist, and a certified nutrition specialist, the certification from the Board for Certification of Nutrition Specialists, BCNS. She is also a member of the American Dietetic Association, Dietitians in Functional Medicine, Nutritionists in Complementary Care, and the Connecticut Dietetic Association. So Esther is very educated in lots of different areas in nutrition. And as you'll learn in this conversation, she got super passionate about menopause as she herself started to get into that age range, and her clients did as well. And they weren't getting the help that they needed to really thrive during that time of life. So it was a super fun conversation. We also talk about the process of writing a book. So if you're someone who wants to write a book, Esther has written 5 of them. So she definitely has got some wisdom to share there. And just in general, how to be the best possible provider for the clients that you're working with, especially when they maybe have had poor experiences with other medical care practitioners. So without further ado, here is Esther Blum. All right, everyone. Well, I am so excited to have with us on the show today, Esther Blum. Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast, Esther.
Thank you, Laura. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, and I feel like we've kind of been orbiting each other in the online space for a while. So it's really cool to finally have you on the show. And I know you have not 1, but 5 books that you've now published. And we're going to talk about your 5th one, since that's the one that just came out. But for those listeners who don't know you yet, can you just share a little bit about your story? How did you get to where you are in the health space, and particularly speaking towards menopause as the topic?
So I was a clinical dietitian. I worked in hospitals for the first 5 years of my career and really realized I was not helping anyone or changing anyone's lives, giving them 10 minutes of diet instruction after they had had a heart attack and then never seeing them again. So I went and got trained in functional medicine and left the hospital, worked for a functional doctor, built up my private practice, and then did private practice full time. And my clients kept saying, "You are so funny. You should really write a book." And I was like, "Oh no, I'm not an author. I'm not a book." And one of my mentors, Robert Crahan, the late Robert Crahan, he had written many books and he did like stand-up comedy. So imagine like your nutrition mentor who is like PhD, right? And then nutrition, and then like does stand up on the side, and then is a concert level pianist, right? So he's like this right left brain guy. And he was like, "Come to my apartment." He lived in New York for a while. So he's like, "Come to my apartment. We're going to sit one afternoon and we're going to put like the whole book outline together. Like your book." So my first book is Eat, Drink, and Be Gorgeous. And so the whole motto was, "Your body may be a temple, but who says it can't be a nightclub?" So he was like, "This book is you in your apartment with your feather boas and your martinis, and you're just welcoming everyone into your living room." And like, he really helped me put together the outline for that book. And then, as I grew and aged, right? I started out in my 20s. I'm now 52. As I aged, my client population aged with me, and some were ahead of me. And more and more women began coming to me with menopausal issues long before I was perimenopausal or menopausal. So I took it upon myself to really educate myself. And I started running a lot more clinical tests in my lab. I got mentored by doctors. I studied under many doctors and just dove deeper and deeper into clinical research, thousands of hours of reading, going to lectures, listening to lectures online during COVID, reading books, and you delve in, because it would haunt me. Like if I wasn't able to help someone, I would lie in bed at 3 a.m. Like I'd wake up and be like, I could have done better. What could I have done differently? And you don't want to let anyone down. And while I certainly don't have all the answers at all, at least I have enough resources now to say, I don't know, but let's pull in this functional medicine doctor, or, these are the tests I want to run. If you're a candidate for hormones, I want you to go see this doctor to go get a hormone prescription. And so it's taken me a while, but I'm really, very confident and very well versed in perimenopause and menopause now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know that menopause, at least from my experience, is one of those notorious challenges that most dietitians probably either never got any training in. I mean, I don't think I got any training, or maybe it's even that concept of like nutrition makes no impact on menopause. So why would we even talk about it as being something that a dietitian could work with? So I know that there's a lot of people out there that if they work with a client that's going into menopause, they feel totally out of their depth, and they're just like, I literally don't know how I'm supposed to help you because I don't know anything about it. And so I guess in your process of writing your book, did you find that there is a lot of information that's just not taught, or is it one of those really common situations with women's health where it just doesn't get studied that much because there's no money to be made? So then it's like you're trying to do more of that N of one type of research. Like, what was your experience looking into this as a health challenge?
The sad thing is that there's tons of money to be made. Menopause is a $60 billion industry. It is untapped. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, venture capitalists are actually owning healthcare. Your doctor, the wave of the future in healthcare is run by venture capitalists, and the doctors are going to be paid by them. And that's how medical practices are going to be run. So you heard it here first, people. But no, on the back of my book, it actually says gaslight free zone, because women are the medical care for women in menopause is so beyond egregious. It's not taught in medical school. 6,000 women go through menopause every day. They hit their menopause milestone of not having a period for a full year. 1.2 billion women are going to be in menopause by 2030. And here's what their options are when they go into a doctor's office. Number 1, the birth control pill. Number 2, an IUD. Or number 3, a pat on the shoulder and a look that says, well, that's just menopause, so you're going to have to ride this one out. Good luck with that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, dudes, this is so egregious. It's so unacceptable. And there's tons of treatments for menopause out there. And thank God I have a really nice network of functional medicine doctors that I refer people to who work locally and or virtually. Because there is care, and it begins with testing. I do extensive testing in my practice. that looks at metabolic and cardiac and inflammatory markers via blood work. And I do a Dutch test, which is a dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. And I do a GI map test. And we look at your detoxification pathways, make sure that your hormones are moving through your liver, through your gut, and getting pooped out every day. We look at your baseline of hormones, and a lot of doctors will say, oh, you can't even bother testing during perimenopause. Like your hormones are going to be all over the place. That is true. Your levels can fluctuate up to 30% every day, which is why I look at urine metabolites and not blood, because it looks at the downstream of how they're physically moving through your system. And it also looks at your morning and your metabolized cortisol. You know, menopausal mamas don't sleep very well when their progesterone takes a nosedive. So again, you know, some of the messaging in my book is that you don't have to wait until you hit a full year of not having a period before bringing hormones in. You can actually bring them in during perimenopause, and you should. Hormones can change the quality of a woman's life in a big way. You take a woman who's not sleeping, who's gained 10 pounds, with a cortisol belly, who has vaginal dryness, painful sex, and no libido, and you get her sleeping, you restore her libido, you get her cognitive function back, you quell her anxiety and depression. Like, oh my gosh, you're going to change the world. Imagine if every woman did not have to go through these symptoms. So that's why I do all the testing, work on diet. Diet is absolutely paramount. Throw in supplements as needed, start gently bringing in bioidentical hormones as needed, and regularly continue to test and follow up. And oh my God, it smooths the bumps. It really smooths the bumps. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I think at my 6-week postpartum appointment, my doctor basically said, well, you're kind of like you're in menopause right now because of the hormone profile and the way that you feel and everything. And so not that I've been through menopause, but I think being, you know, at this point, 3.5 months postpartum, almost 4 months, it's like, oh, I kind of feel like I get how crappy that would be to have that be your life as opposed to just like, hey, this is a temporary situation just after having a baby. It's like, oh no, this is the way, you know, older age is for women. So good luck, right? Like that would be really frustrating to have that be the conversation. I'm curious, with this being such a big potential industry, and you know, I think we have to be careful about, like, we're not saying people should go off and try to just like make a bunch of money off of women that are struggling, but I do think serving them and helping them get a better outcome and being paid well for it is a totally different story. I'm just curious why, if you have an opinion, why that, you know, this topic is not something that's getting more attention and support from providers who could be helping.
Well, for a couple of stories there. One is that, again, like women are so underserved in medicine. The studies done, you know, you're a clinical dietitian by training. The majority of studies are done on men and rats. When I wrote my fourth book was Cavewomen Don't Get Fat, I looked at 73 studies on intermittent fasting. 13 were done on women. The rest were done on men. There's very little info on intermittent fasting for women, although Cynthia Thurlow, I think, does a great job in her fasting book. But even with keto diets, right, the paleo diets, you know, the research, it all points to men. It doesn't point to women. And that's not to say women can't do well on a keto diet, but anecdotally, and there isn't enough research to support this, but what I see in my practice is women do great for about 3 months, especially like it really quells hot flashes, helps with that midsection fat loss. But after about 3 months, they do need to start bringing some carbs in, or thyroid and adrenals tend to shut down. So that's one reason. Another reason is that, and I had this conversation, it was really disheartening and upsetting, with a colleague of mine who is a medical doctor. And he said, I said, what is the deal with practitioners? Like, why don't they, they write off diet all the time? Doctors, they dismiss diet, they dismiss nutrients. He said, well, there's no good research studies on supplements, not one. And I burst out laughing and said, have you heard of a field called functional medicine, dude? Because there's tons of studies. And he goes, nope, there's no good studies, and medical schools will never teach nutrition, or they teach about 1 to 4 days of nutrition in the whole curriculum. And he said, So you can keep practicing nutrition, but don't call it evidence-based medicine. And my jaw dropped. I was like, are you kidding me? Because in my books, I have, hundreds of studies listed on the benefits. So it's like, it's really egregious there. So, I mean, it's really hard. Now, your best bet in these cases, there are doctors that are very open that I've spoken to. There are doctors that are totally team players and want to collaborate. Most of them happen to be functional medicine doctors. That is your best bet. And even though a lot of functional medicine doctors don't take insurance, and I too am a cash-based practice, or happy to give you all the receipts you want to submit to insurance, but I don't participate in insurance. But it's an investment where you'll see a return on your investment with getting your time back, getting much better quality of care, and never having to have another argument with your doctor. It's a collaborative experience. I collaborate with my doctor. He busts on me. He's like, you're the only patient I have who actually interprets her own lab results. I'm like, dude, I know this stuff as well as you do. So we have very healthy debates and laugh about it. But, I'd rather have that than a doctor just shutting me down and saying, you don't need hormones. I'm not going to test your hormones. You're going to be fine. It's like, really, I'm supposed to live the rest of my life with vaginal dryness and atrophy, a weak bladder and pelvic floor, and peeing 4 times a night. I'm really supposed to live that way? Or I can go to a doctor who says, yeah, I'm going to put you on some vaginal estrogen and maybe some DHEA and testosterone. We're going to get your libido back, and we're going to actually rebuild collagen in the vaginal walls so that your bladder doesn't come at prolapse and your pelvic floor stays strong. So it's like, it's so underserved. It's really underserved.
Yeah.
All I can say.
Well, and I feel like that conversation around evidence-based care, I get kind of pissed off about it, because it's like, the evidence that people like to look at, or doctors want to say is the evidence, is primarily funded by pharmaceutical companies. So the evidence that's getting done, or the studies that are getting done, are not looking at something that can't be marketed, patented, that kind of thing, like food or even supplements, right? So it's like, and I think COVID, in my opinion, really kind of shone a light on this, where it's like, the science, quote unquote, is not necessarily the full picture. And it's really just like who's in control of the science and who gets to do the research, who gets to, have the stamp of approval. And not to say that medicine's not valuable. I'm not downplaying the benefit of certain pharmaceutical products, but it's like, that's not the only thing that can help people. And for them to say, well, because it's not studied, it's not evidence-based, that just really, I think, eliminates a whole swath of options for people to feel better, whether it's menopause or something else. And it's like, well, what is the point of that? Why, unless truly it is this like nefarious, like, we only want to study things that we can make money on, and a lot of money, because we can, put patents and be trademarked and all of that stuff. Even if it's just like, hey, we just don't have a lot of financial benefit to studying this, it's still, I think people could say, hey, there aren't a ton of studies on this, but we have some. And also there's a lot of historical evidence, wisdom, like people who have had experiences. It doesn't have to be this like, super large, highly funded study for it to be something that's evidence-based, in my opinion. And so I feel like that's something that always kind of bothered me about Western medicine and public health, because I have a master's in public health, and I feel like the public health world is the same, where it's like they're not even looking at certain things in a way that would be useful for actually helping people get outcomes. So it's like all this money being spent and all this like chest puffing about how this is all evidence-based, but it's like not really actually looking at what can help people feel their best and optimize their health and not just be sick care. So I don't want to go too far off on that tangent, but I feel like the menopause world, I imagine, is huge with that issue, where it's like, well, you're fine, you're not dying, and we can't make, a drug that's going to fix all your problems. So we're not even going to do research on it.
Well, and here's the other thing is, Laura, my advice is, and I'm always writing about this and talking about this, do not sit and wait for the medical system to change. The way it's going to change is from us. That's how everything changes as consumers, as women. And so like 10 years ago, right, you couldn't go in many places and find gluten-free options on the menu. You certainly didn't see organic foods in Walmart, right? Consumers demanded, consumers changed that. You can get a lot more organic foods everywhere. So if every person goes into the doctor's office and says, there's 20 pages of studies in the back of the book supporting me going on hormones. I want to go on hormones. I've done my due diligence. I'm a candidate. I want you to prescribe them for me. Imagine if all those 6,000 women every single day start saying the same things to their doctors. Then all of a sudden the doctors are going to go to conferences and be like, I don't really know about menopause, but I'm getting a ton of patients asking about, like, what about you? What's your story? Then they're going to have to change, because how you are a practitioner and sit and look people in the eye and dismiss them day after day after day. I don't know how you look yourself in the mirror at that point when clearly there's a problem, clear that needs to be solved. So be a practitioner and solve it. And I've heard people say, well, I'm so busy seeing patients all day. So am I. When do you think I do my learning? At night and on the weekends, in my spare time, on my own time, because I'm committed to my own clients and seeing them get results. If they fail, that means I failed. It's not their fault, right? So, it's like, you've got to do better. If you have some integrity in your practice, people.
Yeah. Well, and from a business side of the equation, I feel like you getting paid to get results for your clients or patients, however you want to look at them, I think that's so much of a better model than the insurance model, which is you get paid for seeing the person,
right,
or for prescribing something, or for, doing the process that you got taught, rather than saying, well, if this isn't working, what do we do instead? And I know there's doctors out there that are not just like, I'm just showing up and doing the bare minimum. But I do think I've heard more in the pregnancy world, because I've been in like Facebook groups and stuff where they're saying, my doctor said this, or, I saw one, I think it was this morning, where the woman was like, I'm 6 days postpartum and I just had a C-section, or maybe it was 9 days. And my doctor said I'm cleared for exercise. Does that sound right? And everyone's like, hell no. Like, I couldn't even walk at 9 days postpartum. So it's just one of these things where it's like the doctor still got paid because he saw, I'm guessing it's a he, but he saw the person, right? But if it was like, oh, you don't get paid unless you're helping people, then I think the system would be so different. And I don't know if that's ever going to happen unless, like you said, it turns into more of a true capitalism approach where you make more money when you actually solve the problem for people, and you develop a reputation for being really great at what you do.
Right. And also, if you're a practitioner and you're not solving the problem, like, to me, I'm infinitely curious. Problems arise all the time in clients that I haven't worked with before, that are new, or that I'm like, wow, that is so fascinating. You know what I do? I get on the phone with the doctors at the lab and say, I don't know what's going on. Can you help me? And we talk it through together. And then, and then patients and clients feel held, taken care of. They understand I may not have all the answers, and I never claim to, but I will do either the best I can on my end to research it for you, or send you to a practitioner who can do better for you. Like, that's all it has to be. And even if doctors say, you know what, I'm not touching hormones, but I know so-and-so down the street who will, go see them. I fully support you. It's just not my wheelhouse. The other problem is, and I outline this in the book too, is that a lot of the doctors are using outdated guidelines. There was a women's health initiative. It's just a little historical perspective, but there was a women's health initiative study that took women who are 10 years post-menopause and said, let's see what happens when we put them on hormones. They put them on synthetic hormones derived from the urine of pregnant horses. What? How is that even physiologically compatible with a woman's body who's 10 years post-menopausal? And then they came to all these conclusions and said, oh, hormones are dangerous. They cause risk of stroke and heart attack and cancer, and you're all going to die. So,
but not birth control. Birth control's fine, right? Like, that doesn't have any sort of side effects or, problems. But anyway.
Oh, we can talk about why birth control is not good for menopausal women, unless you're using it for birth control, but it's not a menopause treatment. And so, so yes, so and the data was not interpreted correctly. So in 2018 and in 2022, the North American Menopause Society revamped its position papers and re-looked at that data and said, you know what, this is actually not correct, not valid. Hormones are safe, bioidentical hormones, safe. You can use them early. You can use them at minimum 10 years post-menopause. And spoiler alert, I have women in their 70s who have been using hormones for 20 plus years and are like, I'm never stopping. So, more and more research is going to come out, but the pamphlets in the doctor's office, the warning labels you'll get at the pharmacy still are designed to scare the crap out of you. They're not updated. So those are, and I have a huge Q&A section in here because women are constantly like, I'm going to get cancer. I have risk of breast cancer in my family. What's going on? This is why I do the tests I do to make sure you're detoxing your estrogen properly. There are plenty of women who could potentially have, genetics for cancer that don't get cancer who are on hormone replenishment. I see women in my practice who are post chemotherapy, who have had mastectomies, lumpectomies, hysterectomies. They still take bioidentical hormones because their doctors are like, hey, your quality of life is more important than your very tiny, minuscule risk of recurrence. They look at family history. They look at all those things. So, it's really, I think we're going to see the research shift. It's just going to be a little bit slow and take a bit of time. But I think in 20 years, like for your daughter, for example, Laura, she's going to have a different experience in menopause than you or I, would have otherwise had.
Which is so funny to think about it. A 3-month-old being like, I wonder what her menopause experience will be like.
Right?
It's like,
Vera,
that's definitely.
Call me in 47 years, Vera.
I'll buy your book and keep it for her 40th birthday, right? So, although by then I'm sure a lot of stuff will be different and different accessibility for treatments.
Yes.
So I guess one question I would have, this is the thing that I think really came up when I was working with clients, and my mom is a dietitian as well, and she doesn't often work with women with menopause because her focus is more on more of the reproductive type of health, getting pregnant, postpartum, that kind of thing. But I always felt like one of the main complaints that I never really truly knew how to help people with from a results perspective, more of a mindset perspective, was menopause weight gain. And I feel like I would love to hear from you as somebody who works with women in this stage of life. Is menopause weight gain something that's like, hey, maybe you just need to have a different perspective on your body image? Or is it something that actually can be reversed in a woman that's going through or has gone through menopause?
Both. It's both. And I'll explain why. So I feel like once you have a baby too, your body is not exactly the same. A lot of women do get their bodies back 100%, but there's a shift. I can tell you my body, my abs have never looked the same since childbirth. And I actually, I love it. One of my really good friends had a baby, and she was like, this is my new suit of armor. And I was like, that is so beautiful. Yes, we all have some stretch marks, some cellulite. You may have veins where you didn't before. I have a big vein in my boob. I mean, come on, what the hell is that? This nice big blue stripe in there now. I'm like, all right. So things are different. Yes. And gravity does move things around. However, you do also need to shift your diet, because starting in perimenopause, in your 40s, your sensitivity to insulin really declines. This is for a couple of reasons. Number one, we're usually more sedentary. We're in our careers, we may have families we're raising, we've got aging parents we're dealing with. We may have more time in the car, we may have more time at our desks. So that is some of it, and that decreases your insulin sensitivity. But then also with the decline in estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, you can lose muscle mass if you are not. And Laura, I know you're an avid weightlifter. And so
lately, not so much, but used to be.
You're only 3 months postpartum. Give yourself a little slack as we record this. But yeah, so your body definitely goes through shifts. So a couple things you can do to remedy this diet and lifestyle wise. Certainly optimizing your protein intake to the tune of 1 gram per pound of your ideal body weight. This works out to, for the average person, about 4 to 6 ounces 3 times a meal, or if you're somewhat, 3 times a day.
You mean
3 times a day. Oh my God.
I mean, you could try for 3 a meal, but
try eating 18 ounces per meal. That's like over a pound. So 3 pounds a day. No, 4 to 6 ounces of protein at each meal 3 times a day. If you're someone who intermittent fasts, you're only eating 2 meals a day, then you want to get like 7, 8 ounces of protein at, your 2 meals a day, or you could get some in snacks too. That is ideal and imperative. If you are someone who lifts weights a lot and you're not optimizing your protein intake, you're going to find it much harder to build muscle in your 40s and 50s. Metabolically, in your younger years, like, you could eat Snickers bars and still build a decent amount of muscle, but as you age, that really shifts. Number 2 is you want to really earn your carbs. So you want your protein to be higher than your carbs, especially on the days you're not working out or lifting heavy. So let's say, I recommend track your food for like 3 days in a tracking app, MyFitnessPal or Apple or Chronometer, whatever you can find. If let's say you're getting about 120 grams of protein a day, your carbs really shouldn't come up past 100 grams per day. So it is good to count. I always say, like, if you could have a cup of fruit at breakfast, protein and veggies for lunch, and then carbs at dinner. So carbs at dinner are the third, I call them my Meno laws for fat loss. Carbs at dinner and a good amount, like a cup to a cup and a half, will not only help you sleep overnight, but you're also a lot more insulin sensitive later in the day. And both of those combinations or the ratios can really be beneficial when it comes to changing and optimizing your body composition. Now, you may need to do less carbohydrates. My whole book, Cavewomen Don't Get Fat, teaches you how to find your own unique carb tolerance. So you may have to experiment, but I have found for about 80% of the women in my practice, these are the law. These are the tools we work with. And often when they're not losing weight, it's because their carbs are much higher than their proteins. And when we flip those ratios, great things happen. And I may bump up their fat as their carbs decrease. I'll bump up fat and with their protein. But for the most part, it helps with appetite control, blood sugar, energy, sleep. And we all want those things. And there's no reason why. I constantly hear women saying like, oh, well, this is just menopause and this is how I'm aging. And I guess I'm supposed to feel tired now that I'm in my 50s. I'm like, that is BS. Not true. I feel better now in my 50s than I did in my 20s when I was eating Snickers bars and going to the gym and smoking and drinking. So
yeah,
but you can feel better now. That is like, do not let the number just be a death sentence for you. You're 50. You're not dead. Right.
It is so, maybe it's just because I'm getting older. Like I'll be 36 in April and I'm like, 50 doesn't really sound that old.
No.
Like it's, and maybe it used to be considered old. I don't know. I obviously, 20 years ago, I would have thought 50 was ancient, but it's, and I do have very active parents also that like my dad just turned 65 and they play tennis all the time and they're, just like not slowing down as far as their life is concerned. So it is interesting to just see different perspectives on what aging should look like, especially for women. And I don't think a lot of our listeners necessarily are the kind of people that assume life is just going to go downhill when they hit 50. Yeah. But I do think that it's really easy to take on those beliefs when that's what you're surrounded by.
Yeah.
And I think in our country, because most people eat poor quality diets, they're very high carb, not high protein. They're not weightlifting. I mean, how many women, I think it's getting more common, but how many women do we know that are in the gym lifting weights when they're in their, 60s or something? So it's like, My grandma lifts weights and I think she's almost 90 now, but she's in her 80s for
Go,
sure.
Grandma.
And yeah,
Yes.
she's got a personal trainer. So, it's one of those things where the people that you're surrounded by, if they're talking about how, oh, this is just how things are and this is what I experience, and if that's what your, older relatives are saying, it's just really easy to think, oh, there's nothing I can do about this. Whereas, as Esther's explaining, there is a lot that can be done, and it doesn't have to be a decline in health and function.
Not at all.
So in the interest of time, I know we wanted to talk a little bit about your experience writing not only this book, but you've written, did we say 5? This is number 5. Writing one book is a big accomplishment. And I know we have a lot of listeners in the business space that might be thinking, oh, it'd be really cool to write a book. And I know people have said to me before, like, oh, have you ever thought about writing a book? And I've had a lot of friends write books, and I have not necessarily been super excited about the experience that they had. So I'm just curious, for you as somebody who's done it 5 times, what has your experience been like, and what advice would you share for somebody in like a business or the health space that's thinking about adding a book to their repertoire? I know before we hit record, there was some like, oh, I got a lot to say about that. So now I want to hear what is the experience?
So I always say that writing a book is like owning a boat. The best 2 days of your trajectory are the day you start and the day you finish. It is work. It is a labor of love. I have had all experiences across the spectrum. I've had really good ones and I've had really crummy ones. I will say the closer the book is to your heart, the better it will flow. It takes me on average 6 to 8 months to write a book. But when I am in alignment, right? The way I was with these 2 books were by far my most aligned. When I'm in alignment, when it's me coming from the heart, when it's me talking to, it's like as if I'm talking to you, Laura. Every book comes from the heart. I will write it with one woman in mind, a woman in my practice, one of my close friends. And I speak to that person because readers know, they can feel the vibe of like the connection to the writer. They know when the writer is speaking to them and speaking from the heart. I have goosebumps when I say this. And this, I keep hearing such great feedback from See You Later, Ovulator. My friends are like, I feel like I'm just sitting having a conversation with you. I'm like, that's what it's about. Other books I've written have been because, my publisher gave me a 3-book deal and was like, well, now you have to write blah, blah, blah. And then I'm just a machine churning them out. Mm-hmm. Or, my agent, was like, well, you've got to write this book because this is what the market demands. Those books did not sell as well. I'm just really opening the curtains here. But, the book sales already for See Ovulator were like, wow, I hit like 6 number 1 categories on Amazon in a couple days. Like it exploded because the messaging is so clear. And, Eat, Drink, and Be Gorgeous. Like I've sold a good, probably 50,000 of those. So it really is important that you do it from the heart. Don't do it because someone tells you to. Don't do it because it's what someone thinks you should do. You will give up a lot of your free time. You will be crummy to your family and your clients. I recommend like, if you can do it, if you can batch it and do it like in a writer's workshop or go hole yourself up in a hotel for a week and write that way, that's a really great way to do it. For me, it has to be receiving in a creative download. It has to be like a spiritual experience almost where I am very much partnering with the divine and the universe and being open to being the conduit to convey what needs to be conveyed. And it also came from, 27 plus years in practice and listening to stories and writing down. I mean, I have notebooks full of conversations with women that are almost identical of the suffering they have gone through. So I included some of those anecdotes with permission, of course, in the book too. So I really, think it's that being said, once you have it, it is a very powerful marketing tool. It gives you a lot of street cred. These days, I don't think it matters as much if you go through a traditional publisher versus, self-publishing. But I do recommend you hire a good editor. I recommend you do have help. You don't do it alone. And you hire a really good publicist, because like what my PR team did was so helpful. We did a podcast tour, and it was like a slingshot. Like I recorded podcasts starting in May. The book didn't launch till October. We held them. And then boom, the week the book came out, majority of them dropped. And that was really helpful too. So the marketing strategy is important and should not be overlooked. It can be in some ways more important than the book. And I felt like I joked to my husband, I'm like, now I understand how George Michael and Prince felt like, and all these recording artists who were like, I'm opening my own label, because you do want creative control. When you work with a traditional publishing house, you lose a lot of creative control. There's been times when my voice got edited out of my books, which was infuriating and disheartening. And so this last book, See You Later, Ovulator, I did with like a hybrid style publisher. And I said to the editor, you cannot touch my voice. You can rearrange the content all you want. Leave my voice in. And she totally honored that, which was great. So be very selective of the team you work with, call their references, do your due diligence. It's really a very important decision that you make.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I love what you said about that combination of writing something that you're passionate about, but also having the marketing as part of the equation, because I think something that you've done well with this book is that you are speaking to a problem that's obviously a big problem that people are experiencing and they want help with. You didn't just say, I just feel like writing about this and I don't care what, if I'm helping solve a problem. But then you also let yourself have your own voice and have like those downloads and everything, which is, I agree. Like whenever I'm creating content, if I can get into that headspace, it's so much better than if I'm like, oh no, I got to write about this or whatever. So I my clients know that I beat them over the head with the niching conversation around, you have to be solving a problem if people are going to spend money on it. And so, I love that combination, because either end of the spectrum too far can really hurt success. Because if it's like, even if you're solving a problem, if you don't care about it, if you're not passionate about it, it's like, that's probably not going to work too well and you're not going to be happy. But then I work with a lot of the people that kind of go in the other direction too far, where they're like, I'm so passionate about this and I want to talk about this. But it's like, but do people want to hear about that? Like, and you can write it. I'm not saying you can't do it, but if you're trying to run a business, like you got to write about something, or you got to create content for something that people really care about, and want help with, and are willing to invest in, and, already know that they have that problem, and they're not just like, wait, what are you talking about? So, I love that you've combined those two things really effectively, because otherwise either side of the equation could get really unsuccessful. And then you put all this work into something that maybe is like, why did I just do that?
That's right. And you also, don't be afraid. I mean, I'm such a firm believer. There's no such thing as competition. I believe there's room on the shelf for everybody. So do your due diligence, look at comp titles, any book proposal, whether you do it to a traditional agent or your own, you have to ask yourself, why is my book different? Right? What makes my book stand apart? There's already a few books on menopause out there. Why is mine different? Right? I knew with mine, I was like, nobody has the content I'm putting in. Nobody's talking about the testing. Nobody's giving anecdotes of women. Nobody's talking about diet with testing. Nobody's putting supplements in, so I put it all together. In there. And I was like, this makes my book stand out. And same with Eat, Drink, and Be Gorgeous. I was like, there's nobody making a nutrition book that sounds like a chapter of Sex in the City or an episode of Sex in the City. That's what I want to do with my book.
Yeah.
So, you got to make your voice stand out. It's no different than like a college application, a job application. You've got to be different. Even if it's just a little different, you've got to say, well, the reason you're going to want to buy my book is because it has this, whereas others don't, or it solves this problem. But
Yeah.
be strategic and thoughtful about what you want to include content wise. I agree with you. Like, and the more niche you get, the more your business explodes. We used to think it was the opposite. And,
Yeah.
you're not Nutella. You can't please everybody, right? You got to really niche down.
And I love that you're saying that part of the niche is also the way that you talk about stuff. Cause, menopause isn't this like nobody's ever talked about menopause before, so I'm the first one. But if it's like, hey, I'm making it fun, I'm like, making it more of a conversation kind of book as opposed to like a textbook kind of experience, then that in and of itself is value for people because not everybody wants to read this super dry, information overloaded type of book. Like they want to enjoy the reading that they're doing. So that is something that is part of your approach and part of your niche to grow your business is like, yeah, it's all science-based, but like it doesn't have to read like a textbook, which I think is really cool.
Exactly. You get it. See, you get it. Yes. You gotta make nutrition fun and sexy and accessible for everybody. It shouldn't be a dry, bland diet. No.
Mm-hmm.
Like just
Awesome.
take broad concepts. Nobody needs a checklist of foods they can and can't eat right now. Let's really talk. Like we've all done that, been there, done that. We just want to know big concepts.
Mm-hmm.
It's so simple, much simpler. And I've had a couple of colleagues be like, wow, I got through so quick. It was a shorter book. I was like, I don't need to overload. Women are busy. We don't need these long books anymore. Get to the point.
I definitely have to reel myself in sometimes because it's like, oh, I have all this stuff to share. And then it's like, yeah, but do they need that? Probably not. So, well, Esther, it's been so fun to talk to you about this. And I know that before we hit record, you were telling me about an event you have coming up in February. So do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about that event and how they can participate?
Yeah. So I have a couple giveaways, Laura. If you go to estherblum.com/menopause, and Esther's ESTHERBLUM/menopause, you will get my Happy Hormone Cocktail, which is your 3-step guide to put into place today. Things are going to make an impact through your menopausal journey, give you tools that you need to get through your menopausal journey. There's also supplement protocols in there, which are very beneficial. And then you will also get the opportunity to get a VIP ticket. This is a $500 value to my online live event in February of 2023. So if you go to estherblum.com/menopause, you will have access to all of those.
Awesome. I love it. And, the whole event thing I think is so fun to be able to have that as part of something like a book or a program, because I think sometimes people just get so isolated in terms of I'm doing this myself and I don't know anybody else who's doing it. So I think it would be really cool to have that opportunity to connect with other people who are taking the same approach and, interested in the same things. And I feel like, we were always involved in the online space before COVID, but I feel like COVID kind of made online now a thing. And now everybody's aware of it and is like, yeah, online events, like totally normal, right? Versus maybe pre-2020, they'd be like, wait, what? It's online? So I really love that that's opened up opportunity for people all over the world to help people and not have to get them all in a space and not have to be like, well, I'm in New York, but you're in California, so I guess you can't participate. It's just making it accessible to so many more people.
That's right. Yes, absolutely. I know it's the first time doing online, but I'm really excited about it because I'm literally going to be here in my office with a whiteboard and we're just going to go to it and teach and connect and talk to each other. And you can be in your pajamas all day.
That's the best part. It's the best part of online business.
That's right.
So we'll link to all of that in the show notes. If you guys want to go to laurschoenfeldrd.com onto our podcast tab to go check out the episode with Esther and get access to all of those links. But we're so excited for you in this book. And I know, by the time this recording's come out, it's already published. So people go check it out and enjoy the process of learning how to not just survive menopause, but it sounds like really thrive through the experience and enjoy being an active, maybe, empty nester that doesn't have all these kids that are needing all your time. And now you can finally enjoy yourself, being able to really enjoy those years as someone who's, vibrant and and active and not just like, well, guess my life's over now.
Oh, quite the opposite. Menopause is freaking awesome. Like it's nice. You're free from a lot. I mean, just being free from a monthly cycle, hallelujah. That was my favorite part of breastfeeding was no cycle for 9 months. This is
I
awesome.
did think about that. Yeah, it was the other day. I was like, oh, it's officially been a year. Like actually, as of the day of this recording, I think it's like 2 days away from the year to the date I found out I was pregnant. And I was like, wow, I haven't had a period in a year. That's so weird. Because,
Right.
I used to talk about period health and, regular periods all the time. And I'm like, I totally forgot about that. I guess this is why people don't care if they don't have a period, because it's like actually kind of convenient to not have to deal with that, even though we know how important it is for health. But
Yes.
Anyway, I digress.
Yes.
The postpartum experience, I think, is just giving me a lot of compassion for people in lots of different stages of life. So,
Yes.
But thank you so much, Esther. It was really great to chat with you. And thanks for those of you hanging out with us. We'll see you here next week on the Fed and Fearless podcast. Take care, everybody. Hey there, Laura here again. If you're anything like the hundreds of health and nutrition entrepreneurs that I've worked with over the past few years, you want to create an efficient, structured, and organized online health office that saves you time, maximizes your impact and your income, and provides a great experience for your clients. But maybe you've been told falsely that all you need is free tools like Google Calendar and Google Drive to make that happen. Or maybe you know that you need to use a client management software like Practice Better, but you feel overwhelmed trying to figure out how to set it up in a way that actually saves you time rather than wasting it. Either way, the fact is you need a well-oiled client management system, one that works for you like a team member if you want to have a successful online health and nutrition business. And in my brand new free training, I'm going to teach you the 6 essential steps to set up Practice Better for a more profitable and efficient virtual health and wellness business. I'll give you the step-by-step system for setting up your client management software that will get you out of the day-to-day admin work and back into the role of the high-level health and nutrition professional where you belong. I'll also show you how my client Jackie used these exact principles to help her make over $200,000 in revenue in her first full year of business, while also preparing to become a first-time mom. And by the end of this 60-minute training, you'll finally know the best way to create an efficient, structured, and organized online health office that saves you time, maximizes your impact and income, and provides an amazing front-end experience for your clients and customers. To get access to this exclusive brand new training, go to practicebettertraining.com and select the training day and time you'd like to attend. And don't worry if you can't make any of the times listed. We'll be sending the replay to all registrants, so just be sure to look for an email from hello@lauraschoenfeldrd.com to get your personal link to join the training. Having a well-organized client management system is a non-negotiable when it comes to building a financially successful online health business that doesn't burn you out. And I can't wait to show you the exact steps to doing so in the fastest and most efficient way possible. Go to practicebettertraining.com to sign up now, and I look forward to seeing you on the training.